Hey everybody, welcome back. I'm Father Michael Revak, pastor of St. Mary Magdalene in Noonan, Georgia, and you're watching Essentials. Today we are going to talk about a very contentious topic. It's one that even Catholics at least don't understand very well, if not just outright sort of disregard the doctrine, and that's the doctrine of purgatory. Very confusing topic for a lot of people. It's a sticking point for a lot of Protestants, and I just kind of want to unpack it a little bit so that we can all see that this is a perfectly reasonable thing to believe in, and not just reasonable, but it actually doesn't make sense not to believe in it, right? So the long and the short of purgatory is that purgatory is usually talked about as a noun, as a person, place, or thing, as a place, right? Purgatory as a place. But purgatory is not a place, it is a verb. And I'll tell you what I mean by that in a second. Going back to purgatory as a place for a moment, we get the misunderstanding that purgatory is like a waiting room or a sorting room. So as a waiting room, it's a place where people are just kind of waiting around. They're not in heaven, they're not in hell, waiting for the final judgment. That's not what purgatory is. And as a sorting room, sort of the place where judgment actually happens, where you go to purgatory. Purgatory is where the judge's bench is, and God separates the sheep from the goats and sends some to heaven and some to hell. Not what purgatory is. Purgatory isn't even a place. Purgatory is a verb, it's an action. So purgatory is that space, I know that's kind of noun language, but it's that space that we actively traverse between this life and heaven. And you might be like, there's no space there. What are you talking about? As soon as you die, you either go to heaven or hell. Well, that might actually be the experience that we have, but it doesn't actually make sense. And here's why. Has anybody ever died perfect? I mean, we know Jesus died and he was perfect, but Jesus was the God-man. We know Mary died perfectly, but she was the Immaculate Conception. John, of course, purified in the womb of Elizabeth, probably died perfectly. Can't imagine he committed any sins when he was alive. But let's say, barring those three, nobody dies perfectly, right? I think we can all agree on that. However, we can also agree that nobody goes to heaven unless they're perfect. You can't go to heaven imperfect. And so there has to be a final perfection between dying imperfectly and getting into heaven perfectly. And whatever that space is there, that's purgatory. Now, that's a very broad definition. Whatever that space is there, that's purgatory. Another way to look at purgatory is kind of in a simile. So purgatory is like waking up in the middle of the night and it's dark. And you've got to stumble to the bathroom. Maybe you step on a Lego and you're like, ah! And you get into the bathroom and you turn the light on and you're like, oh no, the light, it burns. But in a minute or two, you're fine, right? Because you had to adjust to the light because your eyes were used to the darkness. Right? When we live in this world, sin darkens our perception of God, right? And we don't see God perfectly. Paul says we see God now as in a mirror darkly, right? But when we die and we see the full illumination of God, the initial impact of that might be a little jarring, and it might take a little time to get used to. C.S. Lewis talks about this in his, I think it's the fourth book of the Chronicles of Narnia, The Voyage of the Dawn Treader, when they're going out into the ocean and things are getting brighter and brighter and brighter, and they have this effect of, this is hard, this is bright, then they get used to it. Then it gets brighter and they're like, this is hard, this is bright, but then they get used to it. That's kind of the activity of purgatory, where we are presented with the full might of God's glory and splendor, his light, the fire of his charity, and just like turning a light on after a dark room or getting into a shower that's too hot, even though we might end that shower at that same temperature, we have to get used to that. We spend much of our Christian life in this world learning to get used to the fire of God's charity, learning to get used to the brightness of God's illumination, but we don't see it. We can't possibly experience it in its full effect in this life. And so when we die and we go to heaven, the activity of that is going to be a matter of getting used to what God has in store for us so that we can actually really enjoy it. Let's talk about what that must be. Lots of people have come up with beautiful ideas of what purgatory might look like. Dante's Divine Comedy is one of the best ones, right? He looks at it as this this mountain that must be ascended, that is this sort of temporal, or this sort of time-based purification. I'm going to start at the bottom, I'm going to work my way up, and each level I go up, I'm kind of being purified and I'm being made perfect, right? And here's the difference between life in this world and purgatory. Life in this world is an opportunity where we can work on our own perfection, but we can only get so far. We can never perfect ourselves. That's a thing that we have to wait on Jesus to do. And when Jesus does that is after the final medicine of death. He then applies his own perfection, which he has accomplished in his perfect obedience to the Father, right? Because that's what purgatory is all about, the final purification, the final perfection, so that we can absolutely 100% look like Jesus in a way that we didn't when we were still in this world, because we all die imperfectly, right? And so purgatory is whatever the activity is of being purified, of having our vices, the ways that we don't look like God, being purged away from us in this purgative act of purgatory, that we are actively ascending to heaven. Something else that I guess I should say, nobody goes to purgatory who's ultimately going to hell. Purgatory is the place where those who are going to heaven go, because that's the ladder, right? It's the space, it's the elevator, it's the fire through which we pass, or the water across which we swim, that cleanses us of our terrestrial imperfections so that we can be celestially perfect in order to go to heaven. It's in this purgatory, it's in this place where we enter imperfectly, that we are made perfectly like Jesus, so that we fit into that Jesus shaped hole in the wall of heaven, and we can pass through as going through the eye of the needle, because all of the baggage of the terrestrial world has been burned or purged away from us, right? So if you want to talk about purgatory then in a purgative way, you can talk about it in terms of like fire, punishment, pain, but only insofar as we maintain the definition of those things according to the act of being purified. It's not vengeful punishment. It's not suffering for suffering's sake. It is a matter of being made perfect. And so ultimately then, purgatory, nothing more than the soul's action of leaving this life and going into heaven. I'm Father Michael Revak. Thanks for joining me. I'll see you in the next video.